of August 2011. I'm Alex Jones, your host. The legendary New York narcotics detective Frank Cervico is scheduled to be joining us later in the broadcast today. We also have our weekly visit with Bob Chapman on the economy, extremely timely right now, obviously with the global meltdown accelerating. And, of course, we also have my good friend Richard Reeves, a great political analyst, activist, talk show host in his own right, joining us in studio to talk about strategies to ensure within the party structure that Ron Paul wins the nomination, or bare minimum that we block a Mitt Romney or someone like that. It is Richard's view that, that Barack Obama would be even better than getting a Rick Perry in, because if the Republicans get the House, the Senate, and the presidency led by Rick Perry, Mr. Forced Inoculation, Mr. NAFTA Superhighway, Mr. North American Union, Mr. Amnesty for Illegals, and in-state tuition for illegals. I mean, this guy, Al Gore's former chief of staff, is an absolute nightmare. At the end of the day, I probably even disagree with Richard, and we'll debate it today when he's in studio with us, because, and it's probably just a sign of the times that the elite are going for broke, but Obama's doing things that no president has ever done since the Civil War, since what happened with the suspension of the Constitution for, 5 years under Lincoln. Well, I guess 4 years under Lincoln, and then for another year or two under Ulysses S. Grant. And that is completely ignoring Congress and the courts. And that, of course, is our top story today that I'll be getting into after I go over some of the other news here. Obama has launched a war now 4.5 months in Libya and told Congress, you don't have any authority. I'll do whatever I want. My authority comes from the UN. The exact quote is, my authority comes from the UN. I've done this for the credibility of the UN. And it certainly does expand its evil credibility. I mean, he's saying, I take my orders from them, not from Congress. He's put carbon taxes in and regulations over power plants all across the country, particularly coal-powered, and factories that are not insiders. He's given all his insider buddies complete waivers on record, General Electric and others. He has instituted anti-gun moves outside of law via the ATF in 4 western states, and has said he may come out with an executive order putting people on no-gun buy list who have no criminal record. And with no due process, no judge, no jury, can't find out why you're on the list. And undoubtedly they're going to have beta tests where they show examples of Muslim extremists and people who weren't criminals, but that they stopped with this program just to sell the idea so grandpa can't buy a gun and veterans can't buy a gun. Very, very dangerous time. He has obviously worked with the traitorous leadership of the Republican and Democratic parties, Mitch McConnell, Harry Reid, Nancy Pelosi, and Mr. Boehner, John Boehner, the Speaker of the House, to set up the Super Congress. And it is in the news as of yesterday that tens of millions of dollars have been paid directly to the 12 leaders of the council, who will now originate spending and cutting bills, which is officially pretty much everything. Everything's tied to the power of the purse in Congress. So bills don't originate now the way they have for 200-plus years out of any member, and then are debated, that they come out of a committee. You can vote it up or down in the full House or Senate with a simple majority vote, not large majorities like you need for most spending bills. And there's no debate on it. And there's no filibuster in the Senate. I mean, this is earth-shaking type stuff that is happening right now. And it's so incredible to actually see it happening. It's one thing to know that it's coming, but now it's here. And now Obama has announced, and the way this has been spun in the Austin American Statesman here where I live, and in the Washington Post, and a whole stack of news reports, that, Obama's going to decide who gets deported and who doesn't, and he's canceled 300,000 of the latest deportations. 2 years ago, it came out in the Associated Press that they would do these staged raids on meatpacking plants and facilities that weren't part of the insider groups. In one case, arrested 1,100 people plus, and then took them to the ICE facility and gave them green cards on the spot and released them. And, of course, the parts of the border fence Bush built And then Obama continued for show. It came out in AP and Fox as well that those were being built predominantly by illegal aliens. I mean, you can't make stuff up like that. It's so ridiculous. So we're in the North American Union. We're inside the North American Continental Security Perimeter that they officially call the North American Union. Bush signed the secret treaty in Waco, Texas, with Fox of Mexico and Cameron of Canada at the time. And it's just incredible. It's absolutely off the charts to see something like this happening. I'm having one of those moments. It's not Cameron of England right now. Who was the Prime Minister? Guys, look up. I'm having one of those moments. Prime Minister of Canada, 2005. Paul Martin. Martin, Fox, and Fox. So Fox, Bush, and Paul Martin. Double check that again. My memory's failing. Sometimes the most simple things. Like a few days ago, I couldn't remember the name of the disease that mosquitoes can pass on, malaria, and then it popped in my head. So we have launching wars and saying, I don't need any stinking Congress. We don't need any stinking badges. Carbon taxes, environmental regulations, gun laws, but they're not laws. Now, U.S. to review deportations, focus on criminals. So they'll decide now. Now, the DREAM Act and that they've tried to ram through, they got through in California, again, gives more tuition to illegals, basically. And the Bush amnesty, they tried it 4 times, and then Senator Sessions actually released it. The final time they tried it in 2008, they were unable to get it through when it was publicly debated. So there was a news headline that the Senate bill was secret, but they said, trust us, there's no amnesty. And then Senator Sessions leaked it, and the report he put out was called 20 Loopholes in the Immigration Plan. And he went ahead and released it, and they threatened to censure him, but they really couldn't. And it said not only was it total amnesty, in a way it was true, it was an amnesty, it was a pardon. It said the hundreds of thousands of felon illegals living in the U.S. who were U.S. felons, that if they just signed a pledge to not commit more crime, that they would be legalized. And so this is a bipartisan traitorous program to basically end the United States and end citizenship as you know it. And so they're spinning it in the media like, well, 300,000 people, they're just going to, deport the criminals if they feel like it. But I remember Houston Chronicle articles a few years ago where they reported over 200,000 illegals released in 1 year out of Texas jails alone, many of which were felons, arson, armed robbery. I mean, illegals are really above the law. Police will tell you, it's been in the news. I've talked to Austin prosecutors off record, that if police do arrest illegals for drunk driving or no ID or reckless driving, they're given a $5 or $10 fine by the judge. And then the sheriff's department, the police department, the state police are then reprimanded. Just like they said there's not a quota for tickets. Now it's admitted all over the country. All these jurisdictions do have an unwritten quota. Well, it's the same thing. There is a unwritten rule. You don't arrest the illegal aliens. You throw the book at citizens. And I told the story many times. One night, one of our IT contractors, we had a problem, and I had to come let him into the office. And as I drove up, the contractor was in handcuffs with 2 police cars around him, and his driver's license was expired. He hadn't gotten it renewed. And I got out, and the cops bowed up, and then all 3 of them knew who I was. And, oh, hey, we're listeners. How you doing? I said, man, what are you guys doing? Oh, well, we're arresting him for no ID, expired ID. And I said, but if he was an illegal alien, you let him go. And he goes, well, that's right, but I don't care. I'm retiring in 6 months. Hey, have you heard of my band? I play all over. Thousands come out and hear us. It was a black guy, was the most senior of the 3 cops there, and a black Austin cop. A lot of you cops out there listening probably know him. I forget his name. And I said, this is wrong. And I said, if he was an illegal, you let him go. And he goes, yeah, because the judge would just let him go for $10. And so there's no point in arresting him. But this is what we're supposed to do, so we're arresting him. And then they put my contractor in a car. They allowed him to have it to give me his keys. he got driven off to jail, and then another squad car pulled up, and another senior group of cops got out, and they were listeners. In fact, the most senior guy was a white guy. He was not a bad guy, but he was stuttering and hardly talked when I was talking to him. A lot of cops may know who that is. It was over here in South Austin. And I was talking to him, and I said, you know, police are getting out of control. You guys are being trained to act like thugs. And he goes, I know, but I'm getting out of here. I'm retiring in 6 months. My band's so popular. Oh, you got to come see it. I said, you know, I was just in New York, and the police, if you ask them directions, scream at you and say, do I look like a telephone book? And he goes, you know, that happened to me. I was playing a big convention in New York just last year, and I asked an officer for directions, and he screamed at me. Man, I don't like that. I hear what you're saying. So I'm there talking to these cops. They're all nice guys, but they still nice guys that selectively enforced and put an American citizen in a car and took him to jail. And I think they took him to jail because they got all excited and had called it in because they saw him pull into the office park and were checking it or something. And just, you know, once they'd gotten into that alert mode. Oh, yeah, that was the other thing. The contractor had come into the office, and then they'd been banging on the doors, and he came because I guess they knew it was an expired license by running the plate, and they were running around in my office. I forgot that part. Oh, yeah, the cop, it was just so ridiculous. I mean, the guy knew full well who I was. He was going, do you film porn in there? I was like, no, I have a radio show. It was just, they were like crazy gang members.